Amelia hunched over her notebook, scribbling ideas no one else would ever see. The laughter from Jake and the popular kids echoed through the classroom, sharp and careless. Yet her eyes burned with quiet fire, a spark no teasing voice could touch, a hunger the world hadn't yet noticed. Amelia's mornings began before sunrise, the soft hum of a small kitchen, her only company. Her home was modest, worn floors, peeling paint, and a mother's tired smile that carried more love than the world seemed to offer. At school she moved through crowded hallways like a shadow, unnoticed, her presence dissolving into the noise of laughter and chatter. Jake ran past, tossing jokes and high-fives, effortlessly at the center of attention. Teachers remembered his name, applauded his efforts. While Amelia's questions went unheard, her ideas dismissed as daydreams. Yet behind her quiet exterior, her mind was a storm. Every joke she overheard, every dismissive glance, every moment she blended into the background fueled a silent determination. She began to imagine a world beyond these walls, one where ordinary no longer defined her. The contrast between Jake's effortless shine and her unnoticed ambition created a tension that would shape everything to come. The lunchroom buzzed with noise, trays clattering, voices overlapping, but Amelia barely noticed. She sat at a corner table, her notebook open, sketching ideas that seemed too big for this small, ordinary world. Across from her, Jake leaned back, a smirk on his face, nudging friends to glance at her notes. "Still dreaming, Amelia? That's boring," he said, his words light, playful on the surface, but sharp enough to sting. She didn't respond. Instead, her fingers tightened around her pen, her eyes flicking up to meet his, a quiet defiance burning there. In group projects, the contrast became even more visible. Jake dominated conversations, claiming credit effortlessly, while Amelia quietly observed, absorbing every weakness, every opportunity he overlooked. He represented the world that underestimated her, the confident, loud, seemingly untouchable world, and yet that world was exactly what fueled her determination. Every joke, every dismissive glance, every sarcastic comment became bricks in the foundation of her ambition. She wasn't just taking notes. She was learning, calculating, and silently preparing for a future where no one would dare call her boring again. Amelia sat at her desk, notebook open, pages filled with sketches of logos, rough calculations, and tiny steps toward a business no one else could see. Her heart raced as she raised her hand, ready to share her idea with the class. But the teacher glanced past her, calling on another student, her voice left hanging in the air. A familiar ache settled in her chest, the weight of being invisible. Whispers rippled through the room. Classmates leaned toward each other, snickering at her wild plans. She caught pieces of their words, daydreamer, unrealistic, strange. Yet she kept sketching, pressing her pencil harder against the page, refusing to let their noise erase her vision. Then Jake's voice cut through it all. He leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Amelia, selling your little doodles? That's impossible." Laughter followed, echoing louder than it should have. For a moment her throat tightened, her face warmed with humiliation. But deep inside something else grew stronger. The sting of mockery turned into fuel. Every careless laugh carved deeper hunger into her soul. She didn't argue, didn't defend. She simply looked down at her sketches, not with shame, but with a silent promise. One day, impossible would be her victory. The laughter from Jake's impossible still echoed in Amelia's head long after class ended. She didn't argue that day, but she made a silent decision. If no one believed in her, she would build proof with her own hands. After school, while most classmates rushed out laughing, Amelia tied on an apron and clocked in at the local diner. Grease sizzled on the stove. The smell of coffee clung to her clothes, and her feet ached by the end of every shift. She slipped tips into a small envelope hidden in her drawer. Each coin counted, each note folded with care. It wasn't much, but to her it was the seed of freedom. Meanwhile, Jake's world looked entirely different. His weekends were filled with selfies at football games, late-night parties, and loud laughter spilling across social media. His captions boasted of fun, while Amelia scrolled past them on her cracked phone, exhaustion heavy in her bones. At night, she sat under the dim glow of a desk lamp, spreading coins across her notebook like puzzle pieces. The hunger in her eyes wasn't for food or rest. It was for proof that sacrifice mattered. Every dollar saved was a quiet victory. Every skipped party was a brick in the foundation of something greater. The sting of Jake's laughter still lingered when he brushed off her idea again. An online store? Come on, Amelia, no one's buying from you, he said with a smirk, his words dripping with the same doubt she'd grown used to. She stayed quiet, but her silence was not surrender. That evening she sat alone in a small cafe sipping the cheapest drink on the menu, her coins stretched thin. At the table beside her, two young women spoke in hurried voices about how hard it was to find affordable, stylish, handmade items online. Amelia's ears caught every word. Her heart raced. This was it, the gap no one else had noticed. She grabbed a napkin, her pen moving fast, sketching ideas, listing products, roughing out costs. The chatter around her faded. All that remained was the vision unfolding before her, the spark of something unstoppable. The napkin sketches became late-night plans, and soon Amelia faced the decision that terrified her most, using her savings. Those crumpled bills and counted coins, earned through aching feet and skipped moments of joy, now sat in her hands like a fragile lifeline. She hesitated, fear whispering that Jake was right, that failure would only prove them all correct. But then she remembered every laugh, every rejection, every time her voice was ignored. With trembling fingers, she pressed confirm on her first online order of supplies. Nights blurred into mornings. Amelia scribbled calculations in her notebook, corrected mistakes, and learned by trial and error. Her room became her workshop, stacks of packaging boxes replacing the posters on her wall. Jake noticed. At first he laughed, calling it a cute project. But behind her tired eyes, something fierce was taking shape. Amelia wasn't just chasing a dream. She was stepping into a world Jake couldn't even imagine. Brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. The weeks of sleepless nights began to blur. But then one morning, Amelia's phone buzzed with a sound she had never heard before. Her very first online sale. She stared at the screen, barely breathing, the number small but powerful enough to make her heart race. It wasn't just money. It was proof. Proof that her sacrifice had meaning. More orders trickled in, and soon her inbox filled with glowing reviews. Beautiful work, affordable and unique. Finally, someone gets it. Each word lit her from within, fueling the fire that had carried her this far. In the school hallways, whispers shifted. Friends who once ignored her now leaned in with curiosity. Did you hear about Amelia's store? They spoke her name differently now, with awe instead of dismissal. And then there was Jake. He paused when he overheard the chatter, his smirk faltering for the first time. The girl he once teased for boring ideas was suddenly proving him wrong. Amelia didn't gloat, didn't seek revenge. She simply allowed herself a quiet smile, the kind that said more than words ever could. This was her first taste of power, not loud, not boastful, but untouchable in its silence. Amelia's life became a rhythm of sacrifice. By day, she was still the quiet student blending into classrooms, but by night her world transformed. The glow of her desk lamp replaced sleep, her notebooks filled with designs, orders, and ideas scribbled in hurried handwriting. Phone calls with suppliers stretched past midnight, while small packages lined her floor, waiting to be delivered before school. Every sale, every satisfied customer pushed her further, yet every step demanded something more. Her rest, her youth, her comfort. Montages play across the screen, Amelia biking through rain with deliveries strapped to her back, her tired hands wrapping boxes with care, her face lit by the cold light of her laptop. Each scene carried the same quiet truth. She was building something bigger than herself. Meanwhile, Jake began to notice. The laughter he once tossed so easily turned uneasy. He saw her walking into class with weary eyes yet unshaken resolve. Admiration crept in, hidden beneath disbelief. Could this really be the same Amelia he once mocked? The tension between them grew heavy, unspoken. She was no longer the invisible girl in the corner. She was becoming a force. And Jake, for the first time, wasn't sure whether to laugh or to respect her. Amelia's small wins grew into bigger. Amelia sat at her desk, papers scattered, fists clenched, her eyes burning but dry. No breakdown, no surrender. Across the room, Jake watched quietly, the envy in his chest shifting into awe. She should have crumbled. But instead, she hardened. The betrayal didn't break her. It forged her. And in that silence, her resolve grew sharper than ever. The betrayal cut deep, but Amelia refused to let it be the final chapter. Instead of drowning in anger, she studied every mistake, dissecting the cracks that had let someone take advantage of her. Betrayal became her teacher, sharpening her instincts, toughening her heart. She rebuilt piece by piece, not faster but smarter. Late nights returned, but this time her moves were calculated, guarded, precise. She learned to negotiate, to protect, to see 3 steps ahead where others only saw 1. Each setback became a blueprint for her next win. The girl who once counted coins now sat across from investors, her calm voice steady, her pen signing contracts worth more than she had once dared to dream. Jake watched, almost in disbelief. This wasn't the quiet classmate he used to tease. This was a woman commanding boardrooms, shaping deals, refusing to bend. He saw in her the resilience he never imagined could grow from the shadows of their school days. Close-ups capture Amelia's face. No gloating, no need for validation, only focus. Her rise wasn't loud, it was relentless. The world had underestimated her for too long, but now nothing could stop her momentum. The boardroom gleamed with polished glass and steel, the city skyline stretching endlessly beyond its windows. Amelia stood at the head of the table, no longer the quiet girl scribbling ideas in the back of a classroom. She spoke with calm certainty, presenting numbers and visions that left seasoned executives nodding in respect. Her company had not only survived betrayal, it had exploded into a force no one could ignore. Every eye in the room followed her, not out of pity or curiosity, but out of recognition. She had become the authority. The girl once overlooked had turned herself into a leader people leaned on, a visionary who dictated the rhythm of the room. And then, across the room, Jake sat quietly. No longer laughing, no longer smirking, just watching. The realization hit him hard. The classmate he once mocked for boring ideas now towered above the world he thought belonged to him. The camera lingers on Amelia's face as she pauses, her confident gaze steady, the skyline glowing behind her. She doesn't need to prove anything anymore. The world had underestimated her, but now she was untouchable, a power forged from every laugh, every whisper, every sacrifice. The screen softens, Amelia's silhouette framed against the glowing skyline she once only dreamed of. Her story is no longer about revenge, but transformation, proof that strength is often silent before it becomes undeniable. The voiceover begins, steady and reflective. Nobody can predict the power of the quiet ones. Amelia's ordinary days, the overlooked hours, the unnoticed sacrifices, built the empire of her dreams. Every moment of doubt, every whisper of dismissal became fuel. She didn't wait to be seen. She built until they couldn't look away. Images flash, Amelia working late nights alone, then commanding boardrooms filled with awe. The contrast is sharp, unforgettable. The voiceover lands its final note. What will your unnoticed moments create? The screen fades to black. Bold white letters emerge, subscribe. Your rise begins now. A closing promise, cinematic and unstoppable.